One automaker after another is reporting terrible Q2 2023 earnings. Whether you're an old incumbent legacy automaker or a new up-and-comer EV maker, the death spiral is real. Let's take a look. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. I'm going to start with Tony Seba giving himself a little pat on the back this morning. And, it's fine. I think he definitely deserves this because a lot of the way that I'm thinking about this and what I'm going to talk about in this video today has to do with his thinking and learning about what he has had to say for well over a decade about the auto industry. Anyway, he quotes himself from a medium.com article. It's all starting to happen exactly as Tesla and Rethinkx's Tony Seba have predicted for a full decade. And of course, if we read the title of this article, it is Legacy Auto Are Now Locked into Near Bankruptcy. Naive green dreamers, we were right all along. And of course, I will leave a link to this and everything else in the description so you can check it out on your own. As Dr. Paul Palagi says, it's not primarily because green laws got on our side either. It's because, as we predicted, EVs actually became cheaper than ICE cars and were demonstrably better in numerous ways from day one. It actually happened. That's why the Model Y is the world's best-selling car presently. And a little bit further down, in airing these business-as-usual style requests, GM has revealed its hand. In fact, it's a recipe for disaster and indicative of the non-tech, non-green, non-smart legacy auto mindset. These guys are marketers and stylists, not true innovators. They're making stuff that's been around for 100 years using almost the same technology as the 1980s. Companies like Ford and GM, Mazda and Toyota, VW and Jaguar are beginning to admit that they can't make EVs at a profit and are already beginning to give up or begging for special consideration on green taxes designed to hurry the transition. And you know what? Transitioning to EVs is indeed hard. And in fact, many upstart EV companies these days are finding out the same thing. Let's look at Lucid's Q2 2023 results, for example. Lucid lost $764.2 million or 40 cents a share, which is more than the 33 cents per share last year. They made $150 million, but they expected $175 million. And if you haven't looked on Lucid's website recently, they are plastering it. It's like, get special deals, lease the car, whatever you want, we'll sell it to you. Their cars have been sitting around for a lot. They have a lot of days of inventory. They can't sell these expensive sedans. On the positive end of things, they said that they did get another round of funding, so they're good until 2025. So they've extended their run rate out for another year and a half or so, but they're still really hurting because people are not looking to purchase the vehicles that they're trying to sell. If we look at Rivian, the picture is slightly better, but they're still in pretty dire straits. They lost $1.08 per share versus the $1.41 expected, but they made $1.12 billion versus the $1 billion expected. And so it's great to see Rivian getting over $1 billion in revenue, but of course they lost $1.02 billion. So they basically lost 100% of what they made. So they made 1.12 and they lost $1.02 billion. So that's not a recipe for long-term success either. Now, will either Rivian or Lucid succeed? I think that Rivian has a reasonable chance of succeeding. And if the Saudis keep giving Lucid more and more money, then sure, Lucid might eventually succeed, but they are in for really rough times. But at the same time, we're seeing Ford, GM, VW, Toyota, and on and on and on, and a whole bunch of new startup electric vehicle makers in China all having hard times at the same time. The problem is that all of these companies are in a death spiral. They can't sell enough EVs, and if they're selling gas cars, the gas car market is collapsing at the same time, so they're not selling enough cars, so they're losing money. But of course, as they lose money, it becomes harder and harder to raise cash because banks and other lenders will get more and more skittish about lending money to these companies. And then of course, if they can't raise cash, there is the specter of these companies going bankrupt, and eventually that trickles down to consumers who are going to be concerned about buying a vehicle when they might not be able to take it in for warranty service in a few years if the company is bankrupt. And guess what happens if the consumer doesn't trust that brand? Well, they don't purchase vehicles from that brand, and then the death spiral continues. It's a positive feedback loop that just continues. It's like you can't sell cars, can't make a profit, can't convince the consumer that these cars are worth purchasing and people become more and more afraid, then you can't sell cars again. So it just keeps repeating and repeating forever until you death spiral down the toilet bowl. And what is the general problem for all of these companies? The general problem is Tesla. And the problem that they have is that Tesla has been too aggressive about price cuts. They've manufactured a vehicle that people want, or several of them, 4 if you want to count, and 5 soon with the Cybertruck. But anyway, they've manufactured a bunch of vehicles that people really, really want, and they're doing it at such a low cost that nobody can compete with that. So people are transitioning to wanting to purchase electric vehicles, which means that they don't want to buy as many gas vehicles as they used to, which means that most legacy auto manufacturers are in big trouble right now. But at the same time, nobody else can produce compelling EVs for the same price as Tesla, which means that they either have to take massive losses or they have to price their vehicles like the Chevy Blazer $5,000 to $10,000 more than a comparable Model Y. And if you can get a Model Y with better specs and a better company and better build and all of that kind of stuff and a better reputation when it comes to electric vehicles than Chevrolet, why would you spend the money to buy a Blazer as opposed to purchasing a Tesla? And of course, at the high end, why would you not buy a Model S or a Model S Plaid versus the numerous different Lucid models? And of course, when the Cybertruck comes on the market very, very soon, I mean, we're seeing it driving around all over the place around Austin right now. When that comes on the market, that is bad news for Rivian and especially for Ford and their F-150 Lightning. So basically, Tesla is like the foot that kicked over the hornet's nest, and the hornets are flying around and just stinging everybody around them. And everybody's in a massive amount of pain right now. The economy is goofy. The interest rates are high. People can't afford expensive vehicles. Vehicle prices are too high. EVs are cheaper. They're cheaper to own, and they're starting to become cheaper for sticker price, at least for Teslas. And especially with the tax credit in the United States, they're way, way cheaper than the average cost of a gas car right now. So Tesla is in a real pole position, and everybody else is hurting. And the problem with sales, as we saw with something like BlackBerry and Nokia with the iPhone and Android coming in, and as I talked about previously in this video, if you want to check it out, with the quartz crisis in the 1960s into the 1970s, when you went from mechanical watches like this guy to quartz watches, these companies, they went from making massive profits to being basically bankrupt in just a few years. It takes no time at all. It really doesn't matter how many vehicles you sold last year or last quarter. It matters how many you're selling right now. If you don't sell vehicles right now for 1 quarter, you go out of business. And that means that all of this stuff happens very quickly. And as Tony Seba said, he's been predicting this for a long time, but disruption, when it comes, it is brutal to the incumbents. And honestly, it's brutal to most of the new players as well. It's usually a new market and winner takes most. So there's usually, you go from like maybe 5 or 10 old companies and you get 100 new companies trying to do the new things. See China, for example. And then eventually that whittles back down to 5 to 10 new companies, and those new companies take all of the stuff that you had from the old one and grow the market, because of course it's not a one-to-one transition. As I've talked about previously, it's a metamorphosis. You're going from the caterpillar to the butterfly. When you go from internal combustion engine vehicles to EVs, you're not doing a one-to-one replacement, you're doing something brand new, and the market gets bigger each time there's a disruption like this. So this is a place where Tesla and a few other players, BYD would be one of the ones that's an obvious one also, is going to take the lion's share of the new vehicle market, the new transportation market. And that is really bad news for everybody else. They're either going to have to figure out how to be niche players, somehow miraculously turn around the bankruptcy that many of them are imminently headed towards, or they're just going to go out of business. So in the end, perhaps Miley Cyrus needs to redo her song and say Tesla came in like a wrecking ball. All right, I hope you enjoyed this episode and found it fun and interesting and thought-provoking. If you did, please do like it so other people can find it. And of course, consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. As always, a huge shout out to my Patreon patrons, my YouTube channel members, and of course, my ex-subscribers. Thank you all so much for the support that you give this channel. I really do appreciate it. And of course, if you want to join any of the teams, just check out the links in the description. And if you're interested in a whole bunch of really cool merch, check out our merch store. Link is in the description. We have TeslaBot t-shirts, the Tesla meme t-shirt, success is a possible outcome, 4680 battery cells. All of that stuff is on t-shirts, mugs, tumblers, and on and on. So check it out. And finally, don't forget we are both Tesla and Amazon affiliates. If you look in the description, you can see how going shopping for a new Tesla, a solar roof, a Powerwall, or anything on Amazon helps out the channel. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.